Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. And joining me for tonight's podcast, our publisher Andrew Jones and our director of basketball recruiting and a basketball analyst for us, David Sisk, guys. And we're here for another edition of the UNC basketball preseason podcast. And we're here to talk about Armando Bacot. As a freshman last year, let's dive right into Armando. Averaged 24.4 minutes per game, 9.6 points per game, 8.3 rebounds, and shot 46.9% from the field. AJ, I'm going to start with you on this one again. Armando's a guy that we all obviously covered a lot last season. You were at every game. I was at, a ton of them as well. A bit inconsistent at times. He had some games where he really played well, where he really showed glimpses of how good he can be. And he had some games where, Roy Williams rips him out in the first half and you don't see him for 15, 20 minutes because, he was making some of those freshman mistakes and we had some of that freshman learning curve. So what kind of year do you expect from Armando Bacot, and how do you think and where do you think his role is on this North Carolina team this season?
Well, I think consistency will keep him on the court more.
Yeah.
And I think he'll be more consistent because a part of his development as a basketball player was just the simple process of maturity that so many of us have had to deal with at that age. And I believe a lot of that maturation process has taken place. In the offseason, he spent some time with Ed Davis, who's also from the Richmond, Virginia area where Armando's from. And Ed helped him a lot with basketball stuff, but he helped him a lot with other stuff too. And I think that was a great value to Armando. And, Armando recently got accepted into the business school at UNC. He's doing well in the classroom. When we talked to him a few weeks ago, he just seemed a little bit different.
Yeah,
and it's one of the things I love about doing this, as you know, Jacob. I told you that the first day I met you, is that I love seeing kids come as a freshman. A lot of them wobble around a little bit, and they kind of straighten things out, and they get better at interviews. They get better at all these other things. And then we're watching Armando do that. As far as what he does on the basketball court, he has to be consistent because the competition around him to get on the court among the bigs is unlike what this program's seen in several years.
Yeah,
and certainly not many programs in the country have the wealth of big, high-end, gonna make some money one day type talent that the Tar Heels have. So Armando can't do this because these episodes are going to keep him on the bench more than he would want. So, but I do think that with the guys they have, there might be some nights he's just better than other nights because he plays more. A lot of it could be situational. Or he might go with the guy who's just simply playing better early. That's what's going to be so fun about this team is we don't really know. Everything's just supposition right now. But I do expect Armando to be more consistent, and because of that, Armando will be better. The numbers were pretty decent for a freshman last year, and that's with him just really being all over the place. Imagine if he's more here, that alone at 24 minutes a game will increase those numbers a little bit.
David, how much of Armando Bacot did you see in high school covering? Did you cover his recruitment at all?
Not a ton because, there were different ones that I was watching. And when you go to EYBL events and things like that, it's a cattle call. And, it really is. It's like a Southwest Airlines flight, man. You get in where you fit in where you can get in. But the thing is, when you go to those, you go, okay, I've got these guys that I'm going to watch. So, and they have press areas away from the court. So you've got 6 games, maybe 8 games going on at one time. So when they get those guys to the press area, by the time they do that, you're probably already halfway through the first quarter of the next game. And, they're shuttling all these guys in and you try to talk to them. And by the time you get done, you're probably midway through the third quarter. You might get to watch. You've got certain guys you're watching the next game. You might get to watch 5-10 minutes of it. It's back. And that's all it is all weekend long. So even the guys that you got targeted that you want to watch, there's no way you can do scouting reports in that kind of situation. I like to go to 2 or 3 of them, and then by about the third time, I'm not going to interview the guys. I kind of sit and watch them. But it's just kind of a tough situation to kind of watch guys if they're not on your immediate list.
Do you have any thoughts on how much of him do you see at Carolina last year, and any thoughts on kind of how his freshman campaign went down? Because I think to me, Armando last year kind of gave me what I expected. I kind of expected him to be a little bit up and down, but I mean, 9.6 points per game and 8.3 rebounds. I mean, that's not bad for a freshman at North Carolina.
It's funny to me when I look at the national criticism on Twitter. I know that you guys rather kind of talk off the air about who the Carolina fans, who the whipping boys are, but nationally and just looking at things, Armando was really the one that got a lot of heat. So if you would ask me who is probably in the fishbowl the most in Chapel Hill, I would have said Armando Bacot looking from the outside. But if you look, 9.6 points, 8.3 rebounds, I understand the inconsistency part. And when you look at the games, and I'm sitting here looking at all the numbers from last year's game by game, and there's no rhyme or reason. Now, in between the middle, and I know you guys will remember it, basically in a stretch from February 15th to February 29th, he was kind of in the doldrums offensively. He scored 8, 2, 7, 3, and 3. But even in the first games, he had 16 rebounds against Virginia and then 10 rebounds the next game against Notre Dame. But I guess here's what I'm trying to say, though. If you look at his numbers, you compare him to what Garrison Brooks done as a freshman, and there's no comparison. He blows what Garrison Brooks did in his first year out of the water. And, I mean, those are very good numbers. He's just got to do it consistently. And it's not like last year he did it against bad teams and then played poorly against the good teams. Like I said, there was no rhyme or reason. I mean, you look the last game against Duke, he goes 13-12. And then he had double figures and a lot of rebounds in the other game against Duke. He had 12 and 7. So, I mean, he showed up in big situations, but I expect him to really come on. I mean, if you can do that as a freshman and you just grow, if you say, why is the kid inconsistent? It's normally youth.
Jacob, do you remember Armando talking about the voice in his head?
Yes, that was an interesting quote.
If you go back to the Wofford game, which is when the wheels really came off.
Yeah.
If you go back to the Wofford game, Armando had a stretch where, other than, I believe, the UCLA game in Vegas, he really struggled.
Yeah.
And he told us in January that he had a voice in his head that was just kind of messing him up. So when I talk about maturity, there's an example. I don't ever remember an athlete telling me that they had a negative voice in their head. I've heard a lot of them say that they had this other little voice that just kind of pushes them through things. And that's sort of what David's talking about. Armando had those periods, but when he played well and that voice was silent, he played really well. He had 10 or more rebounds in 14 games.
He had 13 rebounds. I'm looking at the numbers, and he was 2 for 14 from the field against Wofford, but he did have 13 rebounds.
So effort was not an issue. I just think that sometimes when your mind gets messed up, your body's slow. If the mind is clear, the body's quicker. And in basketball, that split second, the difference is you turn and score with little resistance, or you turn and score right into, or trying to score into a defender. You lose the ball, you miss a shot. He didn't finish around the rim, around contact very well. He did get to the line a lot. I think he attempted about 140 free throws or something like that. So he played into contact. I think he'll play through contact better this year. I think that the mind will be clearer, so he's going to make those moves a split second quicker, so there'll be less resistance with a lot of his stuff around the basket, and therefore he'll be more efficient. You're going to see all that stuff tick up this year, even if his role is different than a year ago. Even if Kessler and Day'Ron Sharpe are on the floor a lot, and maybe Armando's playing only 20 minutes a game, whatever the case may be, I think his efficiency for the minutes he plays are going to be a big uptick from last year.
80 or 124 from the foul line. I would say one thing, too, that probably magnified that in that Wofford game, they lost to Wofford. So, it's probably if they would win that game, it's probably one of those deals where he's a freshman. We can let bygones be bygones. But, man, if you lose
that was the first game Cole Anthony missed.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they also didn't have Leaky Black. They started KJ Smith at point guard that day.
I'll never forget that game.
You're under the mic. I mean, if you're North Carolina and you lose to Wofford, I mean, everybody's under the microscope in a game like that.
Yeah, that was a crazy game.
And after that, then they went out to Gonzaga, and I was out there. And Armando didn't do much in that game.
Yeah.
That was the game where in the second
Man,
half,
he's spending your Christmas money, Jacob.
Pardon me?
Andrew's spending your Christmas money, man. He's like,
Gonzaga,
I was at Gonzaga. I got to go to Miami. I don't know how I'm going to pull this off.
Well, I got to cover the team.
I'm gonna be in Miami in December. It's awful. It's horrible.
Hey, David, a little secret for you. Jacob knows where his place is. Jacob's laughing right now. He's thinking, damn, AJ really said that.
How many minutes does Jacob get a game?
I don't know. Jacob.
Good question.
I know this.
Jacob's got to hit the three, man.
Yeah, you ain't lying.
Jacob's pulled us out. Jacob's pulled us out of fire. I know in the last possession whose hands the ball is going to be in. It's going to be Jacob Turner.
I appreciate that, man. Hopefully I hit the shot. Hey, but last thing I want to ask you guys about.
Jacob had a couple nights at the beach this summer.
Yeah, man. AJ, he's hooked me up, man. I've had some nice trips. That Myrtle Beach trip was a real nice one.
I know. I called him from my house after trimming shrubs and mowing the yard. I called him in Myrtle Beach, and I'm like, how'd Marco look? So.
I had to bring that up, by the way, because I don't want people thinking I'm a tyrant. I'm a self-serving tyrant.
Nah. Absolutely not. That was a fantastic.
There's enough of that going on these days.
All right, guys. But last question I want to ask you guys about Armando Bacot. AJ, I'm going to start with you on this one. Do you think the influx of a guy like Walker Kessler, a guy like Day'Ron Sharpe, can kind of help up Armando Bacot's game? There's two reasons for that. In my head, I'm thinking, well, there's less pressure on him now because when you look at Carolina's team last year, down low, you had Garrison Brooks, you had Armando Bacot, and behind that was really it. Now you've got some guys that can come in and, really good freshman recruits that are expected to come in and make an immediate impact. Those two factors to me seem to be something that might bode well for Armando Bacot in terms of the pressure and the attention that's on him every game.
I think there's more pressure. Mm-hmm. Because last year he played – what did we talk about after so many games last year? Roy would turn to the sideline, turn to the bench. Be like – and where he would normally – in a normal year, he'd make a substitution. And he's like, whatever, my team's on the court. And so Armando didn't get pulled at times last year. I think that he would have been pulled in a normal year. So I think there's more pressure because of the competition, but I think the competition will make him better. It'll bring more out of him. And look, you want guys that embrace competition. You don't want guys that run from it. North Carolina and Kansas and Duke and programs like that in Kentucky, they have the success that they do, not just because they're talented, but because they have guys that embrace competition. David has told us how many times before, like about Hunter Salas, for example. He's not worried about who's there. Guys like that are so confident in themselves, they're going to go there and they're going to beat out whoever's there. So you want guys with that mindset in your program. That's how North Carolina got all those banners up there. They didn't get all those banners up there because dudes ran from competition. So the competition, I think, applies more pressure to Armando because he must perform to stay on the court. But I also believe he will respond well to that, and he'll be a significantly better player in April than he would have been if he didn't have the same composition on the roster up front to deal with. So they're all going to get a lot better as a result.
Mm-hmm. The bench is the greatest motivator.
Yeah,
and really is. It wasn't Roy's fault last year, but sometimes you're not doing the player justice if he can't learn from his mistakes by watching, because you really can't feel the consequences, and it may be why he played poorly at times. I think it's going to help him because this year I think Roy can be like, okay, watch. And I think that sharpens focus. And if he's not a competitor, if he doesn't take pride in doing things right, you're going to find out in a hurry. But I think he will. I really don't have a lot of doubt there. But I also think I learned at the feet of a coach who believed you had to have 4 post players. You had to have 4 bigs. I know that North Carolina they're old school in that way. And, they're going to have multiple posts. That's what they want to have. They're still going to play the 4 in a high post. He's going to go down to the block. They got big 4s in this group. Mm-hmm. And, I look for them to run a lot of high-low, a lot of double-low post and stuff. But here's the thing. Think about this. If you are an ACC post and you take out 240-pound Bacot, you bring in 240-pound Day'Ron Sharpe or Kessler or whoever, and, man, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's no rest you got one guy banging on you after another, and the whole motivation is that as you just wear teams down as it goes, you get them in foul trouble, you just beat on them physically. I see this North Carolina team can do this. I can see them doing it rather. I had an NBA scout tell me his only concern was he was afraid North Carolina was too big. So, I mean, that may be a good problem to have. So I think all possible scenarios really work in his advantage.
I was a basketball coach. I played, I played 4 in the summer league one year, and we were getting ready to play some team that had a lot of giants, and I remember overhearing him say to another assistant coach, "Size doesn't slump. If you're 6'10", you're always 6'10".
Yeah.
But they have 6 guys in this. Pardon me?
Can't coach it.
Yeah, can't coach height. There's 6 guys in his roster that are 6'10" or taller. If you include Walker Miller, who's a senior, been around, he's spent a year on scholarship. It's Wes Miller's half brother, for those watching who may not know. And Sterling Manley, who isn't going to be a factor right now. He has played some quality minutes before, but he's still dealing with the injuries, and we'll address his story at another time in a different podcast. But so when they're going to be, as Dick Vitale would call it, the all-airport team. They're going to look awesome walking through an airport with all that height. And then you got the length of the perimeter with Puff and with Leaky. I mean, Leaky is 6'8", and his arms are long. He's got 6'10" wingspan, I think. So there's a lot of length, a lot of size in this basketball team. And Armando Bacot's one of those guys. He's also got a nice big lower body, which serves you very well in the lower block. And I think we'll see a lot of that from Armando this season. I'm looking forward to seeing his game progress. It's one of the fun things about doing this in college is watching these kids take incremental climbs. And I think his is going to be pretty significant this year, regardless of how many minutes he plays.
I agree. I'm interested to see what Armando does this year, because I do think he's got quite the upside, and I think it's more about him figuring out some stuff mentally and maturing a little bit on and off the court that I think is really going to take his game on the court to the next level. So the jury still remains on Armando Bacot, but I think he's definitely primed to have a bigger impact than he did for the Tar Heels last season. Well, guys, that's going to do it for the Armando Bacot edition of the UNC Basketball Preview Podcast. As always, guys, we appreciate you watching. Be sure to like it, be sure to share it, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.